All right, welcome to our Dialed In with Delta. This is our second episode of our series to try to help everybody through this pandemic crisis and just give great leadership toward the future. Today we're going to go through how to work from home the right way. And if you've ever been through these Zoom meetings before, you can see at the bottom of the screen there's a little Q&A button and a chat button. If you have questions, feel free to chime in and we will either answer them as we go by speaker, or we will answer them at the end and as we have all our panelists on board with us. Let me introduce today's panelists. First up, since she was unable to make it today, we're going to go share a recording of our interview with leadership coach Dima Ghawi, who provided useful tips for keeping remote workers productive, engaged, and motivated. Next, we have Beth Winkler, co-founder of Magnolia Physical Therapy, who will show us how to create an ergonomic home office space. Then Mendy Daniels from My Psych Network will be discussing the psychological effects of shifting employees' work environments. Last but not least, we have Chad Perrier from Universal Data Incorporated, or UDI, will review protective technologies and other cyber security measures recommended for warding off internet hackers. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and show the video for the interview we had yesterday. Welcome, Dima. Would you mind giving us a brief summary of your background and experience with motivating teams?
Absolutely. Hello, David. I am Dima Ghawi. I'm a leadership speaker and executive coach. I have over 25 years of experience in managing teams, and a lot of my experience is focused on managing global teams. So I got used to early on in my life working with team members that are from different countries and motivating them in a virtual environment. So I've worked for various companies like IBM and Merrill Lynch and Bank of America. And 5 years ago, I started my business focused on topics related to employee engagement, diversity and inclusion, and women's advancement in leadership.
Very impressive. Would you mind sharing some of the greatest operational challenges in shifting to a remote workplace?
Oh, yeah. A lot of organizations, they never worked in a virtual environment before. So, and they were resisting it for many, many years. So a big part of it is getting the team set up, having their systems working, and most importantly, ensuring that they're communicating and being productive. So in the past, when I was working in a global environment, it was difficult to communicate and ensure that everybody is on the same page. But right now, it's even more difficult because we have a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of fear. Employees are challenged with having to homeschool. So when we're talking about operational, it's not business only. It is operational now, is business and personal, that the teams and the managers, the organizations, they have to balance all of that.
Absolutely. What kind of strategic adjustments do you recommend must be made for a smooth transition to remote workplace?
So when you're talking about strategic adjustments, one of the important adjustments is for the manager to be there and to ensure that he or she are supporting their team and staying connected with their team. Another one, obviously, is having the right technology that is going to support the communication and ensuring that the team are able to work together, share their files in a secure environment. A big part of it too is to figure out how they're going to stay connected with their clients, with their suppliers, with their business partners. So there's just a lot of details. When we're talking about strategic adjustment, as you already realize, there's just so much details. The good news is a lot of organizations, they got the chance to work virtually starting in March. So they had to figure out all of this very quickly. And right now, as a lot of them continue to work virtually, they got the foundation, they got the systems, they got IT tools. And now it's just a matter of continuing to stay connected and continuing to motivate their team members.
How do you think managers can best use technology to supervise remote workers and keep them motivated at the same time?
So when we're talking about technology, this is interesting. A lot of people think that if you have the right tools, that's going to solve all the problems. I don't believe in that. Technology is just a tool. What matters is really the communication and for the manager to stay connected with their teams. Right now, there's so many wonderful systems out there. So when we're talking about Teams or WebEx or Zoom, there's just so much that organizations and managers, they have access to see their team. And even though it is not in person, but it's virtual, and to stay connected with them, to read their body language. So when you're talking about tools, I want to make sure that people realize that the tool is not going to fix the problem. The problem is to ensure that we're staying connected with the team and having the right communication with them. And to add to that, the way I look at it, the manager needs to stay connected one-on-one with the team members, regardless what tool they use. Even if it's a old-fashioned phone call, it doesn't matter. They need to have one-on-one conversation with each one of the team members. They need to continue to ask them how they're doing, what can they do to motivate them, to talk about their career goals, to talk about their workload. That is so essential. So if a manager used to do that once in a while in the past, now it needs to be very intentional and periodic. And of course, the manager needs to keep informing the team about the overall vision of the organization, the goals, how they're contributing to the bottom line, and keeping the team connected. So again, having great tools is wonderful, and I love it. I worked in a virtual environment where all we had was the phone. And the picture on our intranet, that was 20 years old. But we still were effective. We still were able to keep the team engaged because we were so intentional in staying connected with them.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today, and we will leave at the end and get everybody, if anybody wants to contact us with any questions, if you don't mind, we'll share your contact information. And I thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate everything that you shared with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Hey, Beth. Thanks for joining us today.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Are you unmuted?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
Oh, no. Okay.
There, I got you. Now you're back. Sorry about that. Could you provide us with an explanation of the science of ergonomics for our viewers and how it applies to the home office design?
Yeah, for sure. Can you hear me now? Okay,
Yep.
Good. So ergonomics is the study of how to be efficient. So when we think of ergonomics in the physical therapy sense, ergonomic is more for how can we be more efficient when we're sitting at our computer to allow for the most efficient way for our muscles and our joints to react. So that's kind of the definition of ergonomics.
Thanks. Are you able to demonstrate an ergonomic setup or show us some helpful exercises to alleviate or prevent some of the common ailments sedentary workers often face?
So what I like to say is I call it the 90-90-90-90 rule. So when you look at the way that you're set up at your desk, I'm going to bring this down just a little so you can see my forearms. Your forearms should be at 90 degrees. Your hips should be at 90 degrees, your knees at 90, and then also your ankles at 90 degrees. So what I suggest you do if you're at your desk, and this goes for working from home or at the office, super important either way. What I noticed at the beginning of this pandemic is a lot of people were having more hip pain, more neck pain because they were used to having an ergonomic setup at work. And then now they're working at their kitchen table or worse on their couch. So it's really important to make sure that you simulate the work environment as much as you can. Working on your couch is not very productive. You're in a slump position. It's important to have a good setup. What I suggest you do is align your chair to fit the table first. Because a lot of times work tables at home do not go up and down. It might be your kitchen table, it might be a desk, to make sure that your forearms are at 90 degrees. And then what I suggest is if you have a laptop and not a desktop, is to get one of these risers. You can use a couple phone books or coffee table books, put those underneath. You want to make sure that the top third of your screen is right in eye view. So you don't want to be looking down and you don't want to be looking up. So, and then having a keyboard that you can, that's detachable, that's a wireless keyboard and a wireless mouse, I think is really important, because if your laptop is up here and you're looking at, you can't, you know, your arms are going to be up this way, and that's going to be really add a lot of strain and stress to your shoulders. I highly recommend one of these little mouse pads with the cushion here. What it allows you to do is to rest your hand so that your arm isn't, a lot of times people are using their mouse and their arm just tends to get really fatigued and tired over time. And then that upper trap, this muscle, starts to come up and they start to get neck pain. That can pinch arteries and nerves into your arm. And then that's when you get numbness and pain down the arm, which is not fun. I really like this little mouse. It's not, I don't have to click it with my finger. I just move it around with my thumb there. And it's just a way that I don't have to lift it up at all. I just have to turn this. So that's another way you can do that. So again, making sure that you fit yourself to the table. And then if your feet are kind of dangling and looking at your thighs and they're not in a good alignment, to get them to 90 degrees, you can put a couple of yoga blocks underneath, or a couple of, you know, kind of, it does, like I said, it doesn't have to be anything super fancy or expensive. It's just getting it in better alignment is really key, so that you don't strain your muscles. If you're like slumped like this, it's going to put a lot of strain on the back of your neck. You're going to get headaches. So that's kind of the basic of ergonomic and how to sit at your desk.
Thank you. That's great. When shopping for office furniture or equipment, what are you supposed to look for in a product to determine if they're ergonomic, or is there a particular brand or store you recommend?
Not really a particular brand. What I would say is, again, like, you don't have to buy any super fancy equipment. If you're going to invest in something, I would say invest in a good chair. Make sure that the armrests are adjustable, can go up and down, and that the chair has as many adjustable things as possible. And make sure you sit in a chair. So I advise, instead of, it's really tempting to just click a button, buy now, get something from Amazon or whatever, but for a chair, I recommend you going into a store, you know, Office Depot, and there's a bunch of them around, and try it out. Or if you're at a friend's office, or you're at a maybe in a meeting with someone and their chair looks comfortable, like, hey, let me try it out. You know, it's important to make sure that you try it out before you buy it, because it's something you're going to be sitting in 7 to 8 hours a day, probably longer nowadays, unfortunately. So you want to make sure that it's really comfortable and then it fits you right.
Thank you, Beth. I'm sure everybody appreciates very much what you shared with us. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, I went to Magnolia when I had some neck pains, and they told me it was the way I was sitting improperly and looking at the screen. And I can tell you from firsthand advice, it works. So
yeah, it makes a big difference. Just a few adjustments can make a big difference.
So thanks again. Moving forward, we're going to switch over to Mendy. Mendy, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm great. It's Friday.
Thanks for joining us. We just heard some of the physical factors of creating a healthy work environment. Tell us from some of the benefits of a mentally healthy work environment, and what are the potential drawbacks of failing to create a mentally healthy work environment for off-site employees?
Yeah, so there's a lot going on that's wrapped up in our work life that is directly connected to our mental health and our mood and how we interact with the world and others. A lot of our identity is kind of wrapped up in what we do for a living for many of us. And I think the overreaching, most important idea is to realize that these circumstances are unusual and different and unprecedented, and we haven't done this before. So there's a huge learning curve, and people may experience emotions that they hadn't experienced before. You know, they could feel really isolated from their coworkers, very disconnected from their supervisors. and become kind of, some people can get complacent and hard to motivate themselves through work with a big change like working from home when you're used to a routine that is, you know, going into the office. So one of the big things I think to start with is that it's important for your mental health to create a healthy workspace, something that lets your brain know that you're not on the couch eating Doritos watching TV, that you're at work, that you have, you know, tasks and things that must be accomplished, and you still have to be organized and responsible and all of that. But I think a huge difference in work experience would be the communication. If you're used to being in an office environment where you just walk by somebody's office and say, hey, you know, whatever you need them to know, that's very simple and we don't really think about it. We have to be very intentional about communicating with coworkers and supervisors when we're not on site. And a lot of communication that's important happens when we are able to look at each other. So phone calls all the time won't necessarily do it. You know, if there's any time that folks are able to make face-to-face contact through Zoom or whatever technology, FaceTime, that's preferable because we communicate better and we feel more connected that way. So I think our setup, you know, that needs to be work friendly and that you can recognize as this is my workspace and it works well for me. That's important. You don't want to try to, you know, be working from the couch with a TV tray and things stuck here and there. You need a real work environment at home. And then pay particular attention to communication. And the socialization that we experience at work is important. And that's likely to change if you're making a change from working on site to at home. So get with your coworkers. And if you normally get together and have lunch once a week, then try to figure out a way to do that, maybe through a Zoom meeting or something, so that you're still getting that contact and that communication. And if you experience, you know, some emotional things that you hadn't experienced before, like say, you know, some depression symptoms where you're just sad, you can't motivate yourself, you feel like you don't care anything about work anymore, or you're sad, you know, other parts of the time when you're not working, or anxiety where you are stressed and nervous about things that normally don't make you nervous or stressed. Seek some help with that, you know. You might start with your coworkers and your supervisors, but if that doesn't make a difference for you, then you may need to reach out to a mental health professional.
Well, that's excellent. That actually leads right into the next question is, what have you seen as the common work from home related stressors that can add to the tension of going through a pandemic?
I think that probably unpredictability, because, you know, when you are in the office, things are pretty predictable. When you're at home, your smoke detector may go off. Somebody may ring the doorbell. Your dogs may go crazy and bark and not be able to hear. And so there's the opportunity for distractions that you didn't have to deal with before. I think the best way is just to be super aware of that going into it and knowing that working from home is going to be different than working in the office, and expect some of those things and be okay with that. Don't white knuckle it and be afraid that something's going to happen, because things probably will, but you'll manage it, you'll get through it, and it'll be okay. Lots of deep breaths and standing and stretching.
Thank you. What are the recommendations for those feeling isolated, stressed, burned out, and or depressed in their day-to-day remote environment? What can employers do to check in with them?
I encourage employers to bump up their communication with their employees who are off-site. The fact that you're going to see them less means that you need to communicate more, because a lot of that will be lost otherwise. So check in with employees more often, and employees have to be a little bit better maybe than they have been at advocating and having a voice and saying what you need. You know, if you find that you're really feeling disconnected, then talk to your supervisor about that. And talk to your coworkers about that. But if that doesn't get better and you're having, you know, some depression symptoms or some anxiety symptoms that haven't been there before, then reach out to a mental health professional and let them help you get through that and figure out a plan.
Thank you, Mendy. I appreciate your time, and we'll let you know if there's any questions. We're going to move forward to Chad and talk more about the business side of things. Chad, are you able to share some of your service changes that your clients were forced to make due to the pandemic and/or some of the problems that you were able to solve?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to say that every organization had its own unique goals and objectives and challenges throughout all of this. But when we saw this pandemic take place, and all of a sudden everybody was forced to go to a work from home environment, we saw this kind of take place in 3 waves. That first priority was making sure that their people had quick access to their office, to their data, to their company's information from their home environment. Not many people were set up to have a full remote workforce. So that started to bring about a lot of questions about what equipment will they need? How are they accessing their information? How are they accessing the data? And what changes that they need to be addressed? They also had to make sure that they had the right tools in place to be productive, making sure that they were able to work with and collaborate with their coworkers. That water cooler talk stopped. That water cooler talk there was no water cooler there for them to ask their coworker a quick question. So the employers had to make sure that they had those tools in place, that they had a means for that channel, for them to talk to their employees, for their employees to talk to each other, and work through that. And that required a lot of changes to their business, to their IT infrastructure, and changes that we had to make very quickly in order to keep their businesses running. We actually sent home our people about a week and a half before the government mandate in anticipation for those changes where we can focus on that. I'm pretty glad we did, because we were able to do just that. And we were able to get all of our clients and all the clients that needed that shift, get them up and working. That second wave was then the training aspect of it. Now that you have them working, how are they working efficiently? How are they working effectively? You know, they were accustomed to accessing or doing certain functions within the office. Everything has changed. So how are they doing that? How are they able to do that properly? You know, some of it was working from home. They went to their office, which was the complete opposite side of where all their internet was. So making sure that we were able to balance that and saying you need to be closer to your wireless access point in order to do that. And once all that settled down and we came to a harsh realization that we were going to be in this for a long time, we wanted to make sure that we reevaluated all the changes that were made to the entire IT environment and make sure we buttoned up any of the security concerns that may have happened. Due to the mass amount of changes within a single environment, you needed to make sure you maintain the integrity of your company's IT infrastructure. Home is a very, very casual work environment, we found, where people would do things where you wouldn't normally do at the office. You know, watching them using videos, allowing your kids to work on your work computer for school work. So we had to make sure those changes in the work environment were addressed.
Thank you. Thank you. Why do you think there's been so much higher threats to cybersecurity with so many people working from home this year? What do the hackers want with your data, and how are they trying to get it?
So I kind of look at the hackers as a modern day organized crime. They, years and years ago, hackers used to do this as a hobby. They used to hack certain networks as a bragging right, as feathers in their cap per se. But now it's turned into a profession for them. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry where they're finding out that there's a lot of money to be made. So prior to COVID, you heard specifically in Louisiana and Texas that these hackers were targeting schools, government agencies, organizations like that, because they understood what data and what the price of that data was. COVID didn't stop that. A lot of the conversations around that stopped. It actually increased that, and that increase was due to the changes that they saw within our environments, our IT environments, opening those things up, as I said, allowing your kids to work on your computer. Those things changed, and they took full advantage of that. Some of the things that they were doing to trick people is they, first and foremost, I believe they took full advantage of people's fear of the pandemic. They took full advantage of people's desire to want to learn more about the virus. So they started sending out emails from what looked like it was from organizations like the CDC. And they also sent out emails about, some of these government programs for the unemployment, for the PPP, that took advantage of the situation where people said, well, I need my money, so I want to click on this link. And that link was a malicious link that would download the payload. Some of the other ways that they were doing that is sending out emails that, you won something. Everybody loves to believe they won something for free. And so they'll send out emails such as, you just won a free Dunkin' Donuts, to where you click that link and then you're malicious. So the work environment changed, so they look to take full advantage of that. Some of the ways that I like to try and say where you can help prevent that, outside of just putting security tools in place, is what I like to call is practicing safe email hygiene. When the virus started coming out, that you heard a lot of people talking about wash your hands for 20 seconds. And a lot of themes and a lot of jokes came out about washing your hands for 20 seconds. Well, I'd compare that to safe email hygiene is look at your email for 20 seconds prior to responding, especially if something looks a little bit off. Some of the characteristics of malicious email or phishing email could be that, first and foremost, look at the mailing address. Is that capital I really a lowercase l that's just trying to impersonate somebody? If it's coming from your IT department, do you really have an IT department at your organization that would be sending an email like that? The next piece is looking at the attachment. They embed malicious software into the attachment in hopes that you're going to click that and download that. So if it's not an expected attachment that you're getting, that would be one cause for concern. But if it's a type of attachment, what's called an executable or .exe, they're very well known to be embedded into those. Generic introductions into that email, hi all, or to whom it may concern, that is another indicator. A urgent request that's asking you to take action quickly. They do that in order for you to try and encourage you to click on that link or not to think before you do something. And then if you do see a link within that email, I would suggest hovering over that link to see if it's taking you or directing you to where it says it is and where it really should be. That's another instance. What I like to say is, when in doubt, pick up the phone and call that person. If you're not expecting something and somebody asks you to send some, especially personal information, payroll information, pick up the phone, call, just to confirm that the request is legitimate, and validate that.
Excellent, excellent. I've had similar phishing people that, are sitting in a desk next to me, send an email for a wire to go to Russia or something. And obviously I knew better, but it's great information. Do you have any thoughts on the future of technology in the workplace, especially since so many organizations are deciding to keep employees permanently remote?
Yeah, I'm actually very excited about what the future holds for us. The pandemic, two of the things that I think the big things that the pandemic changed is how we approach our work. It forced us to rethink some of our possibly even age-old philosophies and how we conduct our business and what we think about business. It also forced us to use tools that may have been available to us this whole time that we were not using. It's no longer enough for a company to simply provide infrastructure and the tools and expect their people to do it, but we need to be intentional about how we set our infrastructure up, how we expect our employees to work, and how we're using these tools. The remote work setup is here to stay. We need to be able to address that in a structured, well thought out way. Instead of forcing a centralized workforce, we need to make sure that we are agile enough to manage a remote workforce, to allow our employees to work remotely if something like this were to happen again. If something like this goes on for longer, we need to make sure that our organizations are set up and built with that in mind. Security needs to stay on top of mind. I refer to it as organized crime. As probably y'all seen in TV and even the olden days, organized crime can took businesses down as they so choose, and these hackers can take your business down. I like to look at how you handle security in three different ways. It's the people, process, and technology. So you can have, you spend thousands and thousands of dollars on technology, but if you don't have the processes to help support it, to support the mission of your business, and if you don't have the people that are trained in order to how to use it, how they should be working, all that goes out the wayside. The people are going to be a big factor in this. It's not only trained in what they're doing, but their mental health, as Mendy had said, and I think that this whole call is we need to make sure that we're engaged with our staff to make sure that they are still energetic about working. I know before the pandemic, we did whatever we can do to help employee morale and help employee engagement. That way, every day when they walk in our doors, they're excited to come to work. That's changed now, and that's going to look different. So businesses need to make sure they're able to address that in whatever ways they can. Again, I think it's very exciting what's to come. Humans just in nature are very innovative people. If the last, 8, 9, 10 months haven't showed us anything, is that we can adapt to our environment. We can innovate with the best of them, and we're going to be okay in the long term. It's just making sure that we're able to address the environments around us.
Beautiful. Thank you, Chad. I appreciate all your great information. And before we jump to the questions, our marketing manager reminded me that I did not introduce myself. I'm David Lawrence. I'm the president of Delta Administrative Services. And while I'm talking about our marketing manager, I wanted to thank Francesca Lawrence for putting all of this together and putting this great panelist group together. And also we have Aaron Matlock on the panelists, as he is our HRIS manager, and he's going to now switch us over and tell us if we have any questions. I believe we do have a few.
Hi, David. Yes, there are a couple questions. First is to Beth, asking if there are any quick stretches we can or should do throughout the day.
Yes, one of my favorite things to do is to combine breathing with a stretch. So I recommend if you are sitting at your computer all day, to set a timer for 25 to 30 minutes, because our bodies and our tissues, our brain doesn't just get tired, but our bodies get tired. So it's a productive thing. If you set yourself in small increments of 30 minutes, that your brain is more productive, but your body is also more productive. So one of my favorite stretches to do, I'll show you sitting, but I like to do it standing, just to change the input into the central nervous system. You're sitting all day. So when you stop to take those breaks every 30 minutes, just stand up, walk around, do something else. One of my favorite ones is just to bring the ear towards the opposite shoulder, and then just give a very gentle pull. And you can also let that opposite arm relax, or even grab the side of the chair if you're sitting, and then incorporate the breath in there, because most of us don't breathe enough. So even that helps with the diaphragm, that helps all all of this move better, but it also helps calm down the sympathetic nervous system, which is like our fight or flight, our stressful, the stressful part of our brain. So this kind of gets 3 in 1. So you get the breath, the diaphragm, you get a nice stretch into the side, and you also get to calm down some of those cortisol levels. So I like to go here, and then instead of saying hold for 20 seconds, I just say go ahead and take 5 deep breaths in and out. So each time you exhale, you just kind of bring yourself further into the stretch. And this will take you about a minute if you do it on each side. And then that's a nice little break, and you can get back to work and resume your productivity.
That's great. I feel like every time you come on, I need to check my, if I'm
That's
sitting.
right. Bring those shoulders back.
Got the 90. Thank you. Aaron, you have any more?
Yes, our next question is directed to Mendy, asking for suggestions with how to speak to your children and help them cope.
That's a great question, and I'm so glad someone asked, because we tend to forget about the kids. And, you know, the kids are experiencing all of the same things that we are, with things they haven't done before, the unknown. School is, you know, huge, and some of them are trying to do online school that they've never done before. Everything is different, and they're not seeing their friends. And I think it's a mistake to compare that to adults who aren't seeing our friends, even though that's a problem and we feel sad and disconnected because of that. But for children, that is the way they learn their world. That's how they learn, is interaction with other kids and playing with other children. So you may see some depression kinds of symptoms, you know, kids that are sad, that don't seem to enjoy the things that they used to enjoy a lot. Or you may see some anxiety in children. A lot of times that looks like a lot of tears or frustration. It may even come out as anger. But it's important to keep those lines of communication open with your kids. Talk to them about what the pandemic is, you know, and why everybody has to be careful, and why it's changing and things are different, and that adults are kind of stressed out too. But we're figuring it out, and it's going to be okay. It's just going to be uncomfortable for a while. And then allow them the opportunity to talk to you about the way they feel. Ask them, do you feel sad? Do you feel angry? Is that frustrating? What could make that better? Help them problem solve.
I have something personally I can share. As my teenager, I kept telling her, I'm like, you have to exercise, get moving, and, you know, all of these things. And they're not going to listen to mom, especially if they're teenagers. So you know, with our health insurance, we have this free, you know, doctor on demand or whatever. So I set her an appointment, and I came home and she was doing push-ups, and I'm like, yeah, the therapist said I needed to exercise. So that's what I'm doing. I'm like, so
That's great.
keep in mind, yeah, so if somebody else tells them, they might be more willing to do it, but particularly with the teenagers.
Right.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Mandy. Aaron?
This question is for Chad. Looking for him to speak towards affordable home security software that someone can purchase. Good combinations.
Yeah, I think what the pandemic did is there's a blurred line between the home and the work environment. So part of it is not just the software, but it's the things that you're putting in place. So making sure that you have a password on your wireless. That way nobody's able to, not just anybody off the streets, able to access it. Making sure that your home computer is a supported operating system. So Windows 7 got out of support earlier this year. So taking those things out of place, and you want to have a reputable antivirus software in there. Business antivirus and home antiviruses are 2 different types of antiviruses. So if you're looking at like just your home PC that you do not conduct business on, something like a Bitdefender or a McAfee, even Trend Micro are good antivirus solutions. But you want to make sure that you're understanding what you're going to be doing on that computer and who's going to be using it. Yeah, and just understanding what you're doing, where you're going, the sites that you're visiting. Those type of things, you are the biggest piece that can help protect your computer, your pictures, your family pictures that's stored in your computer. Because if you're going to these malicious sites or sites that aren't secure and you see that little shield on the top of them at the top left, they can get that information from you as well.
Thanks,
Good
Chad.
information. We have one more. It's a combo question for Beth or Mendy. Addressing anxiety, the best way to know the difference between chest muscle pain, tightness and cramping, and a heart attack.
That's a good question. Well, I'll just share something that happened with my daughter, the same one. She wasn't sleeping well and she was getting chest pain. And of course, every night she thought she had COVID. So she was freaking out about that. So that was causing her anxiety to go up higher. So she was tensing all the muscles in her chest. So it was difficult for me to figure out. I mean, I'm not a medical doctor. So as far as, with the heart attack, one of the symptoms is it going down the arm. But I can tell you that I did assess, she was getting a lot of rib pain. So I did do an evaluation on her. With rib pain, a lot of times if you breathe in deep, you can either get a sharp or even a dull pain, and it can wrap around because the rib cage comes, attached to the front, also to the spine. So that kind of alerted me that it's probably something going on with her ribs. But I think the anxiety caused the rib and the chest pain and then also she's like this all day on the phone or the computer, so her pecs are really tight. So what we did is we worked a lot on, opening the chest up, strengthening the muscles in the back, and then I helped improve her rib mobility. And she mostly felt better, but when she would get stressed out, this would come back. So I think it was kind of both, so I mean, and Mendy, I'm sure you can speak on this, is a lot of physical pain, a lot of emotional pain will manifest itself physically. So if you have physical pain, look up here too.
Exactly. I have a lot of clients that ask me these questions because a panic attack, which is derived from anxiety, really can feel like everyone describes a heart attack. And sometimes people they just don't know. And I always tell people to err on the side of caution. Nobody's going to yell at you if you go to the emergency room and they determine nothing's wrong with your heart, but you have anxiety. It happens a lot. So if you just are not sure and you're really worried, go ahead and go to the ER. But generally, if you're young and healthy, you don't have any reason to believe that there's a problem with your heart, then it's likely your anxiety. I would suggest doing some breathing exercises. Diaphragmatic breathing, which is breathing from your diaphragm, is very effective in reducing anxiety pretty quickly. So you could go online and do a little research about diaphragmatic breathing exercises and do some of those. And that should help relieve that fairly soon. And if the pain persists, then I would go ahead and go to the ER just to make sure.
Beautiful.
Okay. Chad, looking for a little advice for businesses. User wants to know, do companies need a complex password policy for employees, and how frequently should those complex passwords be changed?
Chad, you there?
Okay.
Might have.
We lost Chad.
I think we lost Chad.
There's Chad.
There he is.
Sorry about that, guys. Leave it to the IT guy to drop off.
Did you
Did you hear the question?
No, I'm sorry.
Chad, the question was, do companies need complex password requirements, and how often would those passwords need to be updated?
Yeah, so companies, I would strongly recommend having them. Some companies fall under compliancy that require them. What we would recommend is changing them no less than every 90 days. There's a setting called require complex, which means that you have to require at least one capital, one lowercase, and one special character, and a minimum of 8 characters long, to make sure that it's a little bit more difficult for someone that's trying to guess it to get that guesswork. One of the other things and another number of passwords remembered, I would say have it at least 3. So you can't use at least the same password over and over again. It makes you change, at least have it, if you're going to do a rotation at least 4 times. And then number of attempts before you get locked out. That basically says somebody's trying to guess it and they guess it, and you can say this number, but we have it at 5. If you guess the
Lost you again.
correct
I think we lost you.
5 times in a row, your account's locked. That way you know somebody's trying to guess your. Can you hear me or no?
Yes. Back.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm at home and I got kids and wife using it as well. But don't store passwords in a spreadsheet. I would get a password manager to help make passwords. That way you don't have to use the same one in every place that you're going.
How about the people that have it saved? You know how Windows will save your password? I would assume that's a no-no. Or Google?
Yeah. That maintaining updates, that would be sufficient, but you still want to change them.
Aaron,
All right.
are we out of questions?
We have answered all the questions.
Beautiful. Was there anything that any of the panelists would like to share before we end? Beautiful. We will try to put everybody's contact information in. We're going to post this to our blog and onto our website. We'll also ask any of the people that view this to please contact me at Delta if you want to get to any of our speakers. We'll be happy to pass that information on. And again, we appreciate all the time of all of our speakers. You did a fantastic job. And we look forward to the next session of Dialed In with Delta. So with that, thank you. Have a great day and have a great weekend.
Thanks,
Thank
David.
you.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Joe.